So I'm going to be talking about the Teeter Wall, which was a site-specific installation by Ronald Rayl of UC Berkeley. And this installation particularly lasted for 40 minutes from assembly to runtime to disassembly. It is comprised of these pink painted steel beams, which were used as teeter-totters on the Mexico border wall with the United States. This is an early drawing of the project, and it was conceptualized 10 years before its actual installation and execution. On the American side, we would call that Sunland Park, New Mexico, and on the Mexico side, it would be Ciudad Juarez. And what's really interesting about this stretch of land that it was installed upon was that it came up during the Trump administration, around the time when Trump was talking about massive amounts of money being put into this wall. So in its kind of price tag is that the project is a reaction to all this money. So on the administration side, there was a lot of back and forth, or really just kind of a walled off kind of response to project proposals. They asked permission from Border Patrol agents. They tried to ask for arts organizations along the border and artists that work with the border for permission and collaboration and funding, but the answer always came up as no. And in kind of what I think is very ingenious, they just went with it because nowhere in the law does it say specifically you're not allowed to install teeter-totters on the wall. And within 5 minutes of the event starting, Border Patrol showed up, but they were just really watching. There was no real illegal activities technically happening, so the Border Patrol soldiers on both sides watched, and they were invited to participate. Unfortunately, none of them did. Rail said that he wished that they would have, considering how powerful of an image it would have been to have Border Patrol from Mexico and the U.S. on either side of the teeter-totter on the same one. So in terms of inviting people to this work on either side, the Mexico side is quite populated. There's a lot of people that live on that side of the wall. Some places, even some homes, actually use the wall as a fourth wall, which is interesting and kind of ingenious in itself. So children would gather as they would in that area, and Rail and his team asked around and said, what do you think if we put some teeter-totters here? And the kids thought it would be cool, and they told the kids, come back tomorrow afternoon. So the kids would gather, but they did have to send out invitations on the American side, as it did not have a lot going on there. As we can see in the first image there, there's a lot more activity on the left side than there is on the right side, and the right side is American side, obviously. So something we can really notice about this wall is that it is painted bright pink, and that pink is very meaningful. Of course, pink is a very colorful, playful, bright color, but that specific shade of pink refers to it's a signal for the violence that has occurred in Mexico upon women since the 1990s, and this specific app right here was released by the government and other organizations in order to kind of be a safeguard for women, a point of security. So how it works is you would put in 5 emergency contacts and open it up or shake it or press a button, and case of emergencies, and it would send out kind of distress call to 5 people, and not the cops specifically because of how unreliable they are in that area and assisting women in terms of violence and stuff like that. And the United Nations have actually declared in 2015 that femicides are a pandemic in Mexico. This issue was so aggressive, and so it got so bad that this app had to be released earlier than intended because of the sudden spike in violent crimes against women. Anyway, so on a more playful note than that, we're kind of really talking about the scarred land, or the scar markation of the land that borders create. And Ronald Real really talks a lot about this in this book that he released, The Border Wall as Architecture, a manifesto for the US-Mexico border. So he's really reimagining the wall as rather not a piece of kind of markation, a place where violence occurs a lot. And he's really thinking about this meaning and the socialized border of this wall on either side of the border, and the relationships between these two groups of people, Americans and Mexicans, that live on the border, and trying to dismantle these meanings and violences in this book in a very playful way. And we are looking at play as a form of protest in many of these things. So these snow globes, these objects appear a lot in the book, in kind of rethinking the architecture of the wall. And something that came up a lot was the kind of human tenacity of getting over walls. As Ronald Real said in a TED Talk, you can do as many stress tests you can on this wall. You can ram like a 1,000-ton truck into it and people can climb over it. You can just put a plank over top of the wall and people can walk right by. And there is also a famous volleyball game that happens on the border that turns the wall into kind of just a mark in the sand for a game. And this is all working towards dismantling the violent meaning of this wall and taking away the power that it holds on people's economic status, their freedom, the racism that the wall symbolizes and represents. This one right here is a little diorama of volleyball, that famous volleyball game. So climbing and little representations of the bars used as the line marking between customers and a waitress. And nowhere in this biography or the work's description does it say that it is social practice, but I believe that it is entirely what we could describe as social practice in the ways that he engaged participants, transformed the space, and gave space for micro-transformations to happen in all its protest-filled meanings with the interactions between people on either side of the wall or lack thereof, and the way that the fabric of the social interaction is played with on these Teeter Totter qualifies this to be site-specific installed social practice work.